Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today on the keys to powerful visualizations. My name is Mare Newton, and I'm the Senior Manager of Customer Education at Looker. I previously worked as a business intelligence and analytics consultant, and I worked with clients using a variety of analytics and visualization tools until I joined Looker almost 3 years ago. Presenting with me today is my colleague, Tom Yeager.
Hi, I'm Tom Yeager. I joined Looker 2.5 years ago on the professional services team. There, I was helping our new customers learn Looker and implement new solutions with best practices. Now, I work with our customer marketing team as the analytics manager.
Thanks, Tom. There's an area within this webinar platform for you to send over any questions that you have, so feel free to ask us anything. We'll take some time at the end, if we can, to answer and then follow up with you afterwards for anything that we don't get to. You'll also notice that there's an attachments and links section on the site as well, and so you'll be able to find various resources there that might be helpful. But with that, let's dive into the content. So at Looker, our mission is really to empower people through the smarter use of data. We aim to deliver value to everyone in an organization, from business users to analysts to executives. And visualization is really paramount to our ability to deliver on this idea. But why is visualization so important to our ability to use data? It really comes down to the way that our brains are wired. So our cerebral cortex, that's the outer layer of our brain. It plays an important role in consciousness, which includes our thinking, our perceiving, and our decision making. And some studies say that up to 50% of the cerebral cortex is devoted to visual processing alone, which really makes sense considering that other studies indicate that we can process images up to 60,000 times faster than text. We always say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but in fact, it may be much more than that. And when it comes to data, visualization is not only enabling us to process information faster, but it also enables us to see the bigger picture. We can more easily identify patterns such as correlations, distributions, and we can rapidly make comparisons or identify things that might be out of the ordinary and warrant further investigation. Let's say that we work for an e-commerce company and we're analyzing website traffic throughout the day across different acquisition sources. I have this data shown right now on the slide as a table. Do you notice anything interesting right away? I can see the exact number of sessions by the hour of the day and the acquisition source, but it's pretty difficult to see any patterns or trends here. How about if I take a look at this as a visualization? Now I can immediately see that we have the highest levels of traffic overall in the middle of the day. And I can also see that search is our dominant acquisition source at all times, followed in a distant second by organic traffic. By viewing this data visually, this information becomes much easier to see, digest, and interpret. It's really easy to talk about the power of visualization, but it's a lot more difficult to actually start to execute on this idea. Creating great visualizations is really challenging. So today, we'll be focusing on 4 keys for creating powerful visualizations that can drive action and decision making. The first key that we'll talk about is to use trusted data. I know it's much easier said than done, but any visualization is only as good as the data behind it. If people don't trust the data, they certainly won't trust a visualization that obscures those individual data points in favor of showing bigger picture trends and patterns. Visualization is telling a story. Visualizations are about communicating through data. So the story told through a visualization is truly where the value lies. The third key that we'll talk about is to create something that's clear and can be comprehended by anybody. You may build an intricate and interesting visual, but if most people can't understand what it means, then it's fundamentally failed in its goal. And the final key to creating great visuals is to be able to easily distribute and share them. Gathering and then sharing insights is how you really start to drive action with data. Now, we'll walk through each of these in turn, and we'll start with using trusted data. In any organization, will use data differently to achieve different goals. And each uses different applications and has their own preferred way of getting and using data to do their job. And this can create chaos. But within this chaos, it's vital that core company metrics and shared data sets can be relied upon. When someone from finance and maybe someone from your marketing team are together in a meeting talking about campaign performance, it's going to be really difficult to find alignment if they both come in with different numbers and different perspectives on how things are going. Even if you have a trusted data warehouse, this sort of scenario can happen when you're pulling data out and putting it into workbook-based analytics tools. The Looker platform aims to solve this problem through its centralized modeling layer. You can connect the data within any SQL database and then model that data using LookML, which is Looker's modeling language. And this turns your database schema into a logical model that represents your company's business data and metrics. What this means is that you end up with a single governed source of data for the entire organization. Looker then uses that logical model to construct SQL queries that are executed against the database based on the fields and filters that you work with to build your visualization. This puts the power of SQL into everyone's hands, regardless of whether or not they actually know how to write SQL. So having this single source of truth empowers anyone within an organization to create visualizations on top of data that you know can be trusted because it's leveraging that governed version-controlled logic and those central calculations. And then you can explore the data freely and share visualizations and insights without worrying that people will misinterpret the meaning because of those differing metric definitions or because of extracted data. Once you have that data that you can trust, the next step is to really start thinking about the story that you want to tell with that data, or the question that you need to answer. And when telling a story through data, it's important to remember that a good story is always going to be one that people care about. This means that you need to make sure that you're visualizing metrics that matter. Something that I see all the time are metrics like total revenue and daily active users shown front and center on the dashboards that people build. And while these metrics can be useful for comparing organizations to each other, they often don't actually provide that much insight into how well your business is currently doing or do much to help with decision making. Focusing too much on those types of metrics, which we at Looker call vanity metrics, can actually detract attention from the more useful information that you're communicating. Let's take a look at an example. If I'm on the web analytics team at an e-commerce company, I might be really interested in analyzing how our website is doing at attracting business, because I might be responsible for finding ways of optimizing it further and bringing in even more business. One way that I might assess website success would be to look at web traffic. So the chart that's on the screen now, on this slide, this is showing the number of web sessions that we see each month coming in from new users. And to be honest, this shows a pretty bleak picture. The number of sessions on our website coming from new visitors has been in a stark decline over the past few months, and in general, we see a very negative trend. This would indicate that we may need to make some drastic changes to our web strategy. But what if I look at this a little bit differently? If I look just at session counts for new visitors, I may not see that full picture. Session counts in some ways could be considered a vanity metric. In the second chart, I'm looking at data for the same website, really the same data, but instead of analyzing that session traffic, I'm looking at bounce rates and conversion percentage. Bounce rates here tell us what percentage of new people who come to the website end up leaving right away after they enter without engaging in anything. And then conversion rates tell us what percentage of new user sessions end up resulting in a purchase. So this chart tells a completely different story than the last one. Over the last 12 months, we've seen bounce rates decrease and conversion rates increase. So if we think about our session information, we may not be getting as much traffic as we were 6 months ago, but the traffic that we are getting is more likely to engage and more likely to purchase. So shifting from looking at those volume-focused traffic metrics to value-based metrics like bounce and conversion rates really shifts the narrative of the story that we're telling here. Now, a good visualization also needs to have context. People seeing a chart of numbers, they really need to know what those mean, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. So let's turn again to an example. I often see dashboards that post really high-level KPIs across the top. You probably have some in your organization as well. And in this example, we might be interested in seeing the number of new signups coming in through our website that we've had so far this month. It wouldn't be uncommon to see something like this displayed on one of our marketing dashboards. But what does this really tell us? I know that we have 350 signups, but what does that mean? Is it good? Is it bad? It leaves me guessing. Now let's take a look at another version of this. So here, everything is exactly the same, except we've added a comparison point beneath the number. And this provides us with context. So now we know 358 signups is actually up 25% from this same time last month. So we're on pace to beat last month if this continues. That tells me a much different story. It really actually tells me a story compared to just giving me a number that I'm not sure what to do with. The final tip for telling a good story through a visualization is to enable exploration. This means empowering people who are looking at a visualization to be able to ask and answer their next question right away and dig deeper into the plot lines that catch their attention. A great way to achieve this is by setting up drill-through pathways that enable people to click into high-level metrics and then uncover the more detailed data points that are actually making those high-level metrics up. For example, if I'm looking at a visualization that depicts inventory stock levels, it might show me that I have 12 items that are out of stock. Adding a drill to that enables me to click into that 12 and see product name and open orders would then let me see exactly which products are out of stock and how many orders may be delayed as a result. Thinking of a different example, maybe from a web analytics standpoint, we might look at the average time spent on a page and see that it's 43 seconds. A visual drill into that number could show a box plot with all sessions so that I can see a full distribution of the behavior that's driving that 43-second average and identify whether any outliers might be skewing those results. Let's take a look at what I mean. In the bar chart on the screen, we start with a basic bar chart where we're looking at the number of orders that have come in by product category. Drilling into a specific product category that we care about or that we're interested in, then brings up a second visualization that highlights the top brands within that category by region. So now I can get much more detailed information about what I'm seeing there. So far, we've talked about using trusted data and telling a compelling story as two keys to building powerful visualizations. But the story that you tell doesn't matter if no one can comprehend it. Tom is going to pick up here and provide some insight into how you can make sure that your visualization is clear and can be understood by everyone.
Thanks, Mare. So now we've seen that visualizations are powerful tools for shaping perception and understanding. The most important thing to think about, though, when visualizing data is ensuring that the type of visualization you choose actually aligns with the messaging that you are communicating or the insights you are sharing. Let's do a quick poll. Look at the two circles on the screen here and take a guess on how much larger an area circle B is compared to circle A. We have options for you here. Do you think it's 5 times bigger, 6 times bigger, 7, or 8 times bigger? So take a quick minute here and we'll see as the results come in. You should see on the right-hand side of your screen a little pop-up with the poll questions. Does everyone see that? There we go. We're starting to see some answers come in. Give it a few more minutes to see what kind of responses we have. So we're seeing some mixed results. Right. A few more seconds. If everyone take a chance if you haven't done so already. Okay, we're getting some more. Okay, so we're seeing a spread, some all over the place there. Let's do a second poll here. So I'll go to the next slide. We'll open up another poll. In this case, how much longer is bar B than bar A? You can go ahead and submit your answers now as well. Okay. See some results coming in.
There's a few results coming in.
Does everyone see the new? Oh, there we go. It's a little bit delayed, it looks like. Okay. So, oh, there we go. We got some more. So as these results come in, we're starting to see that in the first example, we had kind of a spread all over the place. But in the second one, well, we actually kind of have a spread all over the place there too.
Yeah, in the first one we had, so both are 8
right.
times bigger. We had some people get that right away in the circle example, which actually is unusual. You guys are a bit smarter than most, I think, here with your visual intuitiveness.
Right, so when I took this earlier, I completely misjudged the circle, but I actually got that the bar A was 8 times smaller than bar B. And that typically when we run this exercise, that's what we see. So this is just sort of a different sample group, I guess. But typically what we're trying to explain here, sort of visualize through example, is that there are different ways you can visualize data that have different impacts on how people are able to interpret those results. So this is because our ability to detect and compare differences across objects actually depends on the way in which those differences are depicted. There's a whole slew of attributes you might use to show change within a visualization. We've pulled together a few here on the screen on the spectrum that you see. Things on the left side of the spectrum are better suited for relative comparisons. You can tell without a doubt that the second circle was much larger than the first, but at least for me personally, the specific magnitude of the difference is more difficult to detect. On the right side of the spectrum, you have attributes that are best used for showing absolute comparisons. When the same difference was shown using the bars, again, most people, and myself included, are more likely able to identify the correct difference. Charts that we use are built around these attributes. When choosing a chart, it's important to think about what attributes are being leveraged and how that might impact the message that you are communicating. So let's take a look at a few more examples to illustrate this point. Going back to the e-commerce store that Mare was talking about, let's say we want to know which categories of products are bringing in the highest level of web traffic. In this case, this word cloud does a decent job of calling attention to things like jeans, accessories, and tops and tees, as those are categories with the largest words on the screen. The question we are asked required a relative answer, so using a word cloud is fine. But if we needed to make a more absolute comparison, such as how many more people viewed jeans compared to shorts, the absolute comparison is much harder to do when comparing something like word sizes. To answer this question, a chart that enables a viewer to make more absolute comparisons, such as a bar chart here, is necessary. Viewing this same data as a bar chart allows us to see more specific numbers and compare bar lengths for all categories. To clarify this point even further and drive attention specifically to jeans and shorts, we can use highlighting or color to draw focus to the two bars we want viewers to focus on. Thinking about relative versus absolute comparisons can be a helpful guide for choosing effective charts, but it's also important to think about things like baselines and axes used within a chart that you choose. Let's take a look at the waterfall chart on this slide. If you aren't familiar, waterfall charts show values that are adding and detracting from a total in a cumulative manner. They are commonly used in finance, though here we are using it to show campaign performance in terms of contribution to net profit. This waterfall is great for showing the campaign's contribution to net profit, and it shows, and it is great for showing that, but it also takes away from being able to compare. So if we wanted to instead compare two different campaigns, instead of looking at the overall contribution to net profit, it doesn't do as great because now the lines don't line up. So it's harder to make a relative or absolute difference. In essence, a waterfall chart is nothing more than a fancy bar chart. So it seems like it would be reasonable to make that comparison, but because they're stacked in different places, the baseline actually makes that extremely difficult. Sticking with the bar concept, but aligning everything to the same baseline makes it much easier to directly compare campaigns. However, we lose the more relative but also bigger picture of how these campaigns are driving net profit. In addition to choosing an effective visualization, it's also vital to use a good color palette. The most straightforward type of color palette is a categorical palette. It included a variety of different colors that each represent a category of your data. This map is an example of when you might use a categorical palette showing countries classified as high income in green and middle income in yellow. Categorical color palettes should have enough variety of colors and be applied in the right order so you can differentiate across categories easily whether you have 2 categories or up to 20 categories. The next type of palette is a sequential color palette. This is useful for continuous numeric data that is moving in one direction. Like in this case, we have the gross national income of each country that we see here. The last type of color palette is considered a divergent palette. These are similar to sequential palettes in that they are useful for continuous numeric data, but these are specifically for showing data that diverges from a midpoint. In this example here, we show the divergence in life expectancy for countries from the global average of 63.7 years. This makes it easy to see countries that are above and those that are below, with the depth of color helping to indicate just how far above or below they are. Another thing to think about when using colors and color palettes is to ensure they are accessible for everyone. The most obvious part of making sure your color palettes are colorblind friendly. Colorblindness actually affects 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women. So it's important to make sure that they can read and understand your chart as well. On this slide, we have a basic categorical color palette with a wide variety of colors represented. But if you happen to be blind, what would this look like? Colorblind, what would this look like? And here we have what this would look like for someone who is blue-yellow colorblind. For people with blue-yellow color blindness, 2/3 of these colors are now indistinguishable from another. As another example, here is what the same color palette looks like to someone with red-green color blindness, which is actually the most common form of color blindness. Notice again, in the middle of the color spectrum, how indistinguishable the red and green colors are from each other. This is particularly important to keep in mind because of the prevalent use of red and green in indicating positive and negative performance and outcomes. Using only red and green colors to indicate performance would prevent that information from being easily interpreted by someone who is colorblind. Colorblindness is always something that should be kept in mind when selecting colors for your visualization. When possible, including additional context like arrows can be helpful for ensuring that everyone can see and understand the information in the same way. At this point now, in our visualization development process, we have data that we trust, we found a way to tell the story that's clear and easily understood by everyone, and so the last thing we need to do is make sure that everyone can easily get access to the chart. You spent so much time getting these visualizations together and making them truly impactful. The only problem is, if people don't look at them and use them to make decisions, your work will just be in vain. That is why it's important to bridge the gap between where the data sits and what your users are used to. You can accomplish this by making reports available on a variety of platforms they're familiar with, including both desktop and mobile phones. You can utilize features like scheduling and alert functions to push data out to your users directly. The next step in going beyond just making it available is to actually integrate them into tools and platforms that your users are already interacting with on a daily basis. This can be things like Slack and Zapier, Jira, and more. And then finally, to truly meet your users where they are, Looker allows you to embed reports directly into platforms they use most. For example, even though we ourselves work at Looker, our salespeople still spend most of their time in Salesforce. So we've embedded sales dashboards directly into Salesforce to make the experience seamless. All of those clear, easy to understand visualizations we created are now easily accessible so that all of our users can take action based on insights. Our vision at Looker is that all of this can be done through one comprehensive data platform. You can build your BI model and your visualizations, create custom applications, and integrate data into existing workflows all within one product. At Looker, we want to enable you to build data with data that you trust in a flexible tool in order to deliver critical and actionable insights when and where they are needed. At this time, we are going to open it up for anyone who has questions. You can go ahead and use the chat panel. As we see in, we will go ahead and answer them.
I just see one question right now, but if you have any, do feel free to post them at this time. The one question that I do see is, what colors would be better to use to indicate positive and negative performance, if not green and red? So I can go ahead and take that one. A color palette that I've seen work well, or two colors that I've seen work well, are blue and orange. Those actually can be differentiated by both types of color blindness that Tom spoke about. And so they generally tend to be good and also look pretty nice on a divergent palette if you're using them in a divergent sense as well. Just looking, I don't see any other questions coming through at this time. So we'll end here, but thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.